Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. I'm Karl. Joining me as always, James Parsons in Auckland, Bryn Hall down in Christchurch, and we had another really good round of Super Rugby to talk about. Moana Pacifica, of course, came pretty close to you blokes, Bryn. They gave you a good shot at the start there.
Yeah, they did, mate. I thought they were tremendous on the weekend, and especially in areas that we talked about as well. I thought their set-piece line-out drive, especially in that first half, in big moments where we found ourselves trying to get parity there and trying to score tries, and they stunted us a few times in that first half, which was massive. And look, I thought their defensive intensity in that first 20 minutes was right up there, and they're probably their scramble D and their ability to connect. They made an attempt at 122 tackles in that first half. Going in 14-5, 14-7 at half time was pretty massive for them. And then, probably in that kind of 60th minute to 65th minute mark, Fine Nisi scoring that try was massive for them as well. And then for us, I thought Dom Gardner, who came on for his debut, was awesome around getting that ball back off the kickoff, which probably gave us that momentum back, and we ended up scoring a try off that with about 13, 14 phases off that. And then crucially for us, getting that bonus point try in the last minute, going to our line-out drive and being able to get the 5 points was massive for us, because we probably would have thought that it would have slipped away not getting that opportunity of 5 points. But I think for us, we were a little bit disappointed with our performance, and saying that, we had 6 debutants that were able to play for the first time, and being able to get them meaningful minutes and being able to use the whole of our squad was probably the bigger picture and the biggest thing for us, being able to get that result and getting them to play. But for us, we're under no illusions that going up against the Chiefs this week, who probably let one slip away in the last couple of minutes due to that penalty kick. It could be different, but we know that traditionally it's going to be a tough game. But for Moana Pacifica, if they can continue to have that kind of standard of how they played on the weekend, we could see a few upsets in this in the first part of the season.
So it was good to see Moana Pacifica do really well in their first game and put up plenty of fight and do lots of good stuff. Let's take ourselves into this quick fire round to start, because we'll get into the Blues Chiefs, we'll get into the Hurricanes Highlanders, we'll get into the big win for the Drua really soon. Let's start with Moana Pacifica. Will they get an upset over a Kiwi team before the competition combines?
I've gone no, because I think their performance on the weekend has put everyone on notice, and I think there'll be a sharper focus when teams come up against them.
As a person who's played them, where do you stand on this?
It's just going to be tough, man, considering how much of a small margin it is. But I'm going to agree with Jip. It's going to be a no. But if they continue to keep getting better and they have that level which continues to keep getting better, then we could see it. So
the other team that had a real tough time on the weekend was the Chiefs. They could have won that game, they didn't. But we saw something pretty solid from Peter Gus Saukula. Could he be an All Black this year?
More than pretty solid. His stats were ridiculous, and he's backed it up. 2 weeks in a row. He was pretty strong against Highlanders. I just don't think so, because I just don't know where there's space in the back row for any spots in the All Blacks. Like, it's hard enough to pick that from the squad of last year and the form that they've been showing, to then find space for a new entrant. So I'll say no, but if there's injuries, he's definitely put himself in a position to be there, because his performance hasn't just been this year. He was really good for Taranaki and the Chiefs last year as well.
Yeah, I agree with Peter Gus. I think, look, if you look at his stats, had 14 tackles, 15 carries for 82 metres and 2 offloads, and was instrumental in that try, with Brad Weber being his second try. And so I think if he can get that kind of balance around his game and have those kind of numbers consistently, and does that for the rest of especially in these Aotearoa games to start with, I agree with Jip. If there are a few injuries, then he could sneak in with those kind of performances for the All Blacks.
Could be the best player doing the rounds at the moment who hasn't played Test footy.
100%. He's definitely probably the form player, but I still think Hardy probably pips him. Like, his stats again were ridiculous.
At 27, you wouldn't want him to be wasted on a single Test as an All Black. In a lot of ways, it'd be better off that he ended up playing for Fiji.
Oh, I just think whatever he wants, he's the player, and whatever his goals and desires are is probably the only thing that matters.
Yeah, totally. I think he played international basketball as a youth for Fiji, didn't he?
He's not a small human.
Yes, there's plenty going on there.
Definitely could dunk it.
Okay, next up, Brinner. Perifeta or Sullivan at fullback for the Blues?
Perifeta, I think that's easy, man. I think it's really easy, Perifeta.
Oh, I've gone Stevie as well, Stevie and Perifeta, but I think Sullivan could potentially play that bench role that covers a lot of spots, which is crucial, or he could potentially be in that 12 spot. Seen it work really well for the Reds with O'Connor and Stewart, so it's sort of that dual 10, and then with Stevie at the back, it could fix that hole for as long as RTS is out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next one and final one, player of the round.
Oh, well, I just mentioned two that I thought of, and Petafeta and O'Connor, but I went with Brad Weber, just purely because, like, on a big day, he dots down twice and does probably one of the most ridiculous individual tries you'll ever see. To get that bounce, you knew it was his day. Brad Weber for the weekend.
Bryn?
I've gone Peter Gus. And I was actually second, was pretty close to Artie Severe, who I thought was massive and did some massive moments in that game to be able to claw that for the Hurricanes. But Peter Gus with the kind of stats that I gave as my reason for picking him this week.
There's been a bit of chat about the Chiefs over the weekend, despite the fact that they lost. We saw Josh Lord, the best performance of his Super Rugby career, people are saying. What did you make of Josh and how he went, considering he's an All Black already? Yeah,
look, I think he was solid. If you look at his numbers, they're not dissimilar to a Goodhue or a Brody, probably the most form lock over the weekend was Delaney on debut for the Canes. He was massive. I think it's a performance that is expected of an All Black lock, to get back in there, which is a pretty hard job to do, he'll be needing to do that on a consistent basis with the ability to potentially, upping up, I suppose, the core roles and potential line-out steals that, guys like Luke Romano and that in the past has been their point of difference to remain in that All Black squad.
There is depth at lock, isn't there? There's a lot of locks to choose from, Bryn. It's not going to be an easy thing just to stroll back into the All Blacks.
No, it's not, and you probably thought, 12 to 24 months ago, before, Tuipulotu came into the squad, that kind of timing period, we were struggling a little bit in the media talking around, like, who's going to be our locking partners moving forward. But no, look, I think there's a lot of variety at the moment. You've got Josh Lord, obviously, and then you've got Delaney, who I thought was great for the Hurricanes on the weekend, and then even look at, like, the likes of Blackwell as well, with the kind of motor that he's given, and defensively aside as well, making a lot of tackles and being able to be real dominant as well. And then you've got the Crusaders with Quinton Strange and Mitchell Dunshea, who have been floating in and around that All Black environment, who have been in our environment for a while. So, I think it's probably an improvement in probably the last 12 months, considering that, not too long ago we were worrying about who's going to be our locks, if Sammy or Brody or Scooter got injured in the season.
Don't forget about my boy Paddy, mate.
Oh, yeah, Tuops. Yeah, well, that's it. Tuops is there as well, who's earning $1 over in Japan.
Just the one. Yeah, he's going all right. No, I actually saw a picture of him on the internet the other day, standing next to Oatsy, yeah. Looked like they're having a great time.
They had a little battle against each other, with Paddy coming up trumps, I think.
Yeah.
Paddy's team's top of the comp. There you go. There's your Japanese top league correspondence.
Yeah, NRL starting this week as well. So we get
up the Bronx.
Now we would be talking about another Bryn Gatland heroic this week, but we're not. I swore when the ball went down and he was the guy who's going to kick it, I was just like, the Chiefs have won.
Yeah.
Chiefs have won because he's just that guy. I feel for him and the other kickers. They were all missing and hitting the posts, and it just was not a good weekend for the kickers.
No, I must admit I'd sort of convinced myself it was a loss as soon as there was a penalty within that range. Maybe he should have drop kicked it, because he's done a few match-winning drop goals. But he puts such high standards on himself, especially around his kicking. He won't be happy with it, but certainly not his fault. It was still a hard kick, on the 40-metre, 15 in. Left-hand side, and it is a niggly breeze at Eden Park. Not making excuses for him, because I know he won't want me to, but it wasn't a gimme.
Yeah, is that what ended your goal kicking career, that niggly breeze at Eden Park?
Oh no, I just went for the 1-from-1 down in Hawke's Bay, and 100% record.
Nice.
One of the all-time greats. So, with that being said about Bryn Gatland, do you pick him or Josh Ioane to play against you guys this week, Brennan?
Oh, look, they're blessed in that kind of way that they can go either way. I think we've talked about it a lot earlier on the show with around talking about Joshy and Brynner. But look, I think with whatever way they do go, Bryn did really well in that final last year we played against. So I talked about it last year, how influential he was in that first 40 minutes when he was on there, whether it be his kicking game, his distribution, or actually taking it to the line when given the opportunities. And then, Damon was able to come in that second half and then been able to open us up a little bit because around his running ability. So if they do go that way, Josh Ioane can do the same thing. You look at that shape that they do run, where they've got out the back, hitting and out the back from his forwards to Josh on the back, and then you've got the 3-4s that run those good lines that they've had a lot of payout in the first couple of games, and last year as well. So they can go either way, but I think they'd probably stick with Josh. Another opportunity on Bryn. If it's tight, you can always bring a guy on who's great goal kicking, great general play, and great game management as well.
Could they go for both, Bryn, and put Bryn at 10 and Josh at 15? I'm just thinking, I know Josh doesn't like playing 15, but I'm just thinking the game that they bet you guys last year, Damo was that sort of flat, hard at the line receiver, putting guys in holes, and then they almost had that right with Bryn in terms of the tactical kicking and field position in the final. Could they potentially put both of them on the park and they play two different roles, but it's a split first receiver?
I think that's a really good question, Jip, because I think, for us, we think about it in that 50-22 metre zone, that attacking kick that you can do now. It's really hard if you've got the 10 and 15 that can be able to see that space, and all it takes really is one pass from Bryn off a click play, a counter attack or turnover to be able to get it to that space, and then Josh can kick it into that 50-22 area as well. And then you're talking around that phase play shape, having two generals who can see the different parts of the field and giving good distribution, communication skills, and having a good idea of where you need to be in that space. So, look, I think it'd be a really good a good way for them to go. And, personally, I don't want to see that because I know how hard it's going to be able to defend that. But if I'm looking for the Chiefs, that double pivot role and having Josh, who's played there with the Highlanders and had some good attack. And then I also think as well, the Chiefs end up playing a lot of turnover ball or even off quick lineouts and having, Josh Ioane in the backfield with a little bit more room, being able to use his footwork and have a go on the outside or being able to eat up meters through the middle with tiring forwards. I think he can do that from the back as well, off kickoffs, teams kicking the ball, or just in general play as well.
Over at the Blues, of course, the playmaker there was Beauden Barrett in the second half. It was nice to see him back and playing. What were your first thoughts about his performance? Obviously, he hasn't had pre-season, he hasn't had all of that either, but he looked all right. Yeah,
I thought he handled himself well, got himself in the right positions. There'll be some things like, again, high standards he won't be happy with, but I think for the most part, coming back from the injuries, had limited sort of lead-in because of that progression when you go through the concussion protocols. It is quite a slow, drawn-out process when you've got symptoms for that long. So I think he'll be happy with that. And with Harry Plummer sort of getting injured, it does open up an opportunity for him to jump straight back in there and take the reins.
It was pretty tough, Plummer and RTS both going down.
Yeah, look, I think it poses some questions, who's going to play in that midfield, obviously. But we've said this in the past, that it's the use of your squad that'll get you to the title. So I don't think there's alarm bells going off. They've got plenty of options as well. Heem's played a lot of centre, but I don't know if you want to move Rico. I think Rico's in a really good spot at the moment, so he could potentially come on the bench. And then, as I mentioned before, Azan Sullivan at 12, he's a big body, courageous young man. So defensively he'll be able to work well there. But I'd say they'll go with Tanielu, Talea. Big, strong carrier will get you across the advantage line and a solid defender. And it's sort of, he's like for like with Roger. And I think they want to keep that style.
And he's had a few years' experience, Bryn. He's been around Super Rugby a while.
Tanielu?
Yeah, he's played a lot of 12 for Auckland.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where they'll go, I think, with the likes of Harry and Rog being out. And again, he's had success at the Mitre 10 Cup and Bunnings NPC with Auckland. And then, even a couple of years ago as well, when he actually ended up playing a lot of minutes, he was playing in that kind of 12 role as well. So, but then again, I just think it's really important for Rico to stay at that 13 and being able to help him out a little bit more. And then with the likes of Stephen Perifetto or Sullivan, whoever starts at the back, being able to give those communication skills into that 12. Because we've talked about it a lot. Yes, a 12 is obviously a really important position, but there's a lot of moving cogs for that to be able to give him the information to make his job a lot easier so he can just concentrate on one thing at a time.
I think that, Sullivan and Heem, 22 and 23, that gives you a lot of coverage of positions. That gives you that balance of the squad really nicely. So, like I say, it's not, obviously you don't want two guys that are playing well go down, but you need a deep squad, and this is a perfect opportunity to test that out.
Especially during COVID times, you never know what's going to come.
No, that is for sure.
Well, look at the Hurricanes. Well, no doubt we'll touch on that, but what a result for them. For the fact, Jamie Booth gets ruled out. You get a guy that Logan Henry, who wasn't even in the squad, and comes in, and then obviously the hookers as well, Jip, that you would have probably seen. What a great story for them to be able to get that result, considering the kind of resilience they had to show with late withdrawals in the preparation side. If you're the Hurricanes, no doubt we'll talk about it, but an unbelievable win for them considering what they went through during the back end of the week. Yeah,
and just to jump on the back of that, two positions that you probably need the most prep for, because you've got to know all the line-out calls. Like halfbacks need to know where it's going because they're receiving it. Hookers need to know where it's going to throw. Systems these days. Like it was, and I was watching the hookers obviously closely, and pretty impressive to do that, and debuts as well.
Yeah, just on the back of that, just wanted to give a bit of a pump up to Richard Juddy. I thought he was great coming in late in the piece, and the fact that he put a lot of pressure on Folau Fakatava in that first half, and I thought probably stunted that Highlanders quick ball and him being able to get out and play a bit. So, look, I thought Juddy was great on the weekend, just something that I had to notice nice. And wanted to give a pat on the back for Juddy, who I thought was good on the weekend as well.
Yeah, before we get on to Folau Fakatava, these late call-ups, how big a deal is that? Like, how hard is it to cover these guys to make sure that there's people in camp when you're finding out at the last minute?
I think, like, the world we're in now, and Bryn might be able to, well, he probably won't because he'll never give away the Crusaders' secrets, but he might be able to allude to it a little bit more. But because you know that it's a possibility, it's preparing those guys outside of the squad, potentially involving them in plays during the week, so that if anyone does drop down, like was always sort of done because of injury, it almost needs to be done more so. And I don't think it's all time on the grass, Bryn. I think it would be those little mini sort of group meetings, like the loosies, connecting the tight five, the insides, outsides, all being on the same page. So the guys that are playing, but it's also the guys in the wider squad having a real clear understanding of what the game plan is, what their role is in it, so that they can just jump in at last minute.
I would have thought in a position like hooker, especially, let's say you call in a guy from the wider squad in, then you need a person from the wider squad to come in just in case something happens just before kickoff, because otherwise you're having no scrums, right? So it's quite difficult.
Well, that's why they always will have a third hooker warming up. So for that exact reason, because it's not a position you can just jump into. It probably the toughest position. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a hooker, but it is a hard position to substitute in. Because also I know most of hookers' personalities they're so intent on set piece that they need their reps of throws and get their timing right and feeling right. That would be the hardest thing. But on the flip side of that, there's no pressure on you to nail your throws, so you almost could throw better because you're not overthinking it.
Yeah.
Two schools of thought there.
I think for us, like probably the expectation is, I know it's hard if you're not named in the 23, then obviously you want to try and prepare the best, the starting 23 to be able to perform. But I think coming back to your point, Jip, those mini units have been able to connect and say, like, a what if, we might have a what if scenario, what if I get injured or Richie gets injured late in the piece, what does that look like? So then you've still got to be able to have the ability to set the team up like they do as a non-23, but then have the ability as well to know the players as well. So if there is a late injury throughout the week, you've at least done the prep around what that looks like. So it is a bit of a hard task because you do need to, it's not your normal standard week, because like if you are playing, you almost got to go know two teams' roles. So like, for example, if you're not in the 23, they've been able to set us up this week knowing the Chiefs plays and what all their trends are, but then being able to, if there's late in the piece, you've got to still do your homework around what that looks like for how if you do get called in the squad, and being able to not skip a beat because you've done your preparation.
Are we in a position where teams are going to share players? Like, could this be happening this season where, you have to call the Chiefs up and go, or the Blues up and go, hey, mate?
Potentially. Depth of squads are going to be tested, and with MP now, a lot of them are New Zealand-based players as well. So potentially, you never say never in this COVID world. And the one thing we have noticed between all the clubs is they've got a strong alignment and a collaborating feel to this comp, and making sure that it's the best version it can be.
That's cool.
A good example of that, Ross, I think it's pretty hard if you're a contracted player to be able to give them the license to then go and play and get traded to another team. But the wider players that have come in through the apprentice, or the non-injury replacement players that have come in throughout the week. Like I use Josh Kiefer, for example, who was with us for the whole of pre-season, and then now he's with Moana Pacifica just due to the fact of injuries and that kind of stuff. So I think there's a little bit more leniency around the non-players that aren't contracted with them, and there's a little bit more leeway in letting those guys out to play. But I don't think players that are contracted within the 32 or 37 will then be able to be let played for another team.
There's some good opportunities around.
Yeah, there certainly are. Like the replacement player pool is always, guys do jump around in the past, but it's definitely more so now. And I don't think we could, and this is just my own view, is we can't say it won't happen to players in the 37 either. Like we don't know what's around the corner with this variant, so
yeah.
Watch the space. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
We'll see what happens. Now we were speaking a little bit about Richard Judd before and the pressure he put on Folau Fakatava. I suppose Folau Fakatava's had a dream run through the first year or so of his time with the Highlanders. Every now and then as a halfback you're going to run into a time and a place where your forwards aren't getting the ball you want, and it's going to be a difficult time for you. What did you make of Folau on the weekend? Especially considering what we saw from Brad Weber and other people who kind of put good halfback performance into context.
Oh, look, I just think it's a great learning experience, and it's probably how Tony Brown and the Highlanders and Folau will probably be looking at it. Look, he's, we know the kind of talent that he has and the flair that he has, and that he's able to, open up a game with how he plays. But like I've said, probably a lot when it comes to the 9 and 10 positioning, there's just so much things that you have to worry about. And so, whether that be quick ball decision making, there were a lot of good contestable kicks that I thought he did on the weekend that he executed really, really well. And then, even some second kicks off those contestables, putting it into space. And so he did some really good things, but I think it'll just be a really good learning around understanding. You look at the game management and when Aaron Smith came on and how the game flowed, because it wasn't clunky and he was making the right decisions for his teammates and being able to put them in good positions. And so I think that'll be a transition that Folau will be able to continue to keep it. And we've seen it. You look at the transformation that he made when he was with Hawke's Bay before his injury. Look at the season that he had before, and then that season, the growth that he had in that game management and understanding, being able to play. So I think Folau at the next level, it might be a little bit harder with the fact that Aaron Smith's there, but the more opportunities that he does get to be able to start and play more meaningful minutes, he'll grow and be able to have a better understanding of what's needed in those moments, like he did when he was at Hawke's Bay and he had that great season not too long ago.
When a game is getting the way that it did in that game, where it was a lot of errors, a lot of problems from both sides, it wasn't the prettiest of watches. As a halfback, do you feel like that can kind of domino on you because you are the one who's got the ball the most?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors, a lot of variables. I remember, Jip, you would have played this game. We played in the Lions. This is just me, for example. We played the Lions in Joburg. We trained the whole week. It was really sunny. And then for whatever reason, it just pissed down that night, and we hadn't trained the whole week, and so we had our whole preview around dry weather, trained really well, and it was like a torrential storm that had come through that game, and I had an absolute shocker, just couldn't get the ball out, and had that kind of domino effect that you're talking around, and Ross, and so I think that's going to happen. You're not always going to be able to play your best game, but I think the biggest thing for my learning was then the next week, whether I was on the bench or with the next kind of game that I had, was really important to take those learnings and then being able to then get my prep right, trust my instincts, and then not let that dwell on me, because a lot of players can be able to fall in the trap around, have an opportunity, have one game where I'm a little bit off, and then your confidence goes down. But if you take it as a learning, and I hope Folau does take it as a learning, because he's going to have so many more opportunities to be able to influence that Highlanders team, and he's going to be a focal point in that team for a long, long time.
A pretty frustrated Tony Brown, Jipper, said there's going to be a tough season for them if they continue the way they are. What needs to change to get their fortunes back in the right way?
Look, I think they're actually putting themselves in the right area of the field. It's just converting that pressure into points. So, we sort of spoke about it when they played the Chiefs. The Chiefs took the chances they had in the 22, whereas the Highlanders got down there and a little error or a breakdown turnover meant the opposition got an exit. It was the same, I suppose, in the Crusaders game. They were putting a lot of pressure on that first 20, 30 minutes. They picked up some penalties, try, but for all that pressure, a quick tap by Severis and a wide ball, and the Crusaders are ahead at half time. That is quite frustrating when you've had that amount of ball. So I think making sure that doesn't become a continued frustration if they do miss out on points, and then just being aware in their preparation and the review work that that time when they enter the 22, the more often they can come away with points, the better. And the Crusaders do it the best, and it was probably the first time in the weekend that you haven't done it against Moana Pacifica as consistently as you like, due to their maul defence. Like they were outstanding for holding you out, and then you eventually got over it towards the end. But it's not an easy thing to do, to go into the 22 and come away from points, and it can snowball in frustration. And then with the amount of turnovers, 22 turnovers, I think that's just a skill set thing. I don't think you'll see that 2 weeks in a row from a Tony Brown led side. So a couple of things there, attack and I suppose more attack stuff, because defensively I think they're holding up quite well. Their stats are there or thereabouts, and they're in these games. It's not like they're getting pumped. It's just there every time they've got the ball, they're letting themselves down by not finishing things off after putting so much pressure on people.
And that's always been the hallmark of a good Highlanders side, right? When the opportunities came, they took them.
Well, I think of that game against the Blues last year at Forsyth Bar. Like every time they went into the 22, they just scored a try, and there was that awesome try just before half time. They had the chance to go for the points. They kick to the corner. Aaron Smith runs around the back. He gives that little flick pass back into Punivai, and he scores in the corner. Like they're just ruthless in that area, and I think. And rightly so, they're frustrated because they're used to picking up points. But I have no doubt they'll work their way through it. They're one of those sides that like to have their backs against the wall. So it's a massive fixture at North Harbour Stadium this weekend for the Blues.
21-14 is still pretty tight, like you say. The Hurricanes weren't necessarily at their best, but they got it done. What will Jason Holland be pleased with, Jipper?
Oh, their ability to score points with such little ball in such little territory. Like they were 40%, I think, both possession and territory. So when they got their chances, they took it, and they didn't get many. And then I think the defence, they had to make a lot of tackles. I think it was 159 or something, and they tackled it close to 88, 87%. So those are character. That's not coachable stuff. That's just what, as they say at the club rooms, under your left tit. It's what you want to see out of your team when they're not playing well. They're in that arm wrestle, and they can just stay in the fight. They don't let it snowball, and then when the moment comes, they pounce. And I think you look at their work from Umaga Jensen to get on the outside of Gregory. Man, that was like Gregory's no slouch, and he got around there and then smart enough to shape up and give the inside ball. If he was flustered, that wouldn't have been able to done. The young debutant with a support line, that's the foundations of good character throughout your squad to allow them to perform when they get their chance.
I like that about Umaga Jensen, Bryn, because last week we were talking about the other midfielders, and how well they were going, and he's looked at it and gone, hey, don't forget about me.
I actually watched that and I was like, man, he's playing with a point to prove. Like he came off the bench and he was awesome. He was awesome. I thought Billy Proctor was good as well. They've actually got quite a lot of options in the midfield, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I thought, like you said, the Umaga Jensen to be able to have that play to really seal the game back in the inside. So debutant Henry was tremendous. And then we haven't even talked about his brother, who I thought he slipped into my form 15 with his stats, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about him. But yeah, I think so. There's a lot of depth within that midfield pairing at the Hurricanes, which you'll probably need. And also the fact we touched on it around the COVID, and obviously late changes come in pretty crucial positions to be able to get the job done. You'd rather win ugly, than lose, tremendously. You know what I mean? And so, being able to have wins like that, you talk around character, building that within your group and being able to have real confidence. I think it's a great result for the Hurricanes. And no doubt they'll see the review, they'll look back on what they want to do better. But, anytime you can get a win like that with that kind of disruption at the back end of a week, it's great for their season moving forward. And look, Ardie Severe, unbelievable again, absolutely. Yeah. Unbelievable form player of the competition so far.
Their pack actually need a bit of credit. Like Rakati Stone's try, that was outstanding. Like that was good going. Their set piece was good for late changes. I think 20 tackles to Blackwell, 18 to Delaney. Ardie was up there with 14 or 15. Their big boys were getting through the work, and for the limited opportunities they gave to their backs, they executed as well.
Geez, Delaney came out of nowhere as far as I was concerned. Goodness me.
Yeah, and not like overly tall lock, but man, definitely he's made a great fist of it, and no doubt will be pushing for another start.
So let's get on to our Form 15s, eh? The Dream Team on Rugby Pass is something that you need to go and have a look at. Go to rugbypass.com, Super Rugby Pacific Dream Team, and go and put in your team of the week. In your team of the week, change it each week according to who you think the form players are. Person closest to the form team can win a subscription on Rugby Pass. This week it is Thomas Alogia who's getting that recognition, so well done, mate. And also, if you were closest over the period of a whole season, boys, you get a chance to come here. Maybe sitting there.
I might be gone, they might kick me out.
Kick you out of here, maybe on the big screen with Bryn, but a chance to come and have a chat with the boys and tell us what you think about footy and where the hell we're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get into our form teams and the Super Rugby Dream Team with Rugby Pass. Who's changed for you this week, Jibber?
I've had 7 changes because I've gone for a little bit of a tactic of you can't just have one bad week and you're out of the squad. So, but I have made 7 changes. I've got Rakiri Stones. Any loose head that runs like a back like that deserves to come into a Form 15. I thought Sione Mafaleo was outstanding for the Chiefs, and he had plenty to say when he got that dominance. Peter Gus obviously is in there. I've slipped him in at 6, but I can't move Artie. But I just had to find room for him, so he can play at 6 or Artie, one of them can fight over that. Weber goes into 9. O'Connor at 10, thought he was outstanding. I've gone Nanai Saturu on the right wing, and Caleb Clark's remained there as well, and Stephen Petafeta at 15. Tough to pull out like Will Jordan and Geordie Barrett, but I thought Stevie's game was outstanding.
Yeah, he was pretty damn good. Where have you changed yours up?
Well, I've gone for kind of form, so the guys that aren't playing, I agree with Jip, we might need a bit more clarity around what they might look like for us moving forward. I'm just going for the guys that have played for this week. So I've gone similar to Jip, I've gone Stones. I've actually gone Cody Taylor, who I thought was good at coming off the bench and scoring 2 meat pies. I've gone his brother Alan Alalatoa. I thought he was massive on the weekend. He had 18 tackles and topped the tackle count for the Brumbies. I've also gone Delaney, Bryn Evans, who I thought was good on the weekend. He had 2 massive turnovers and had 10 tackles. And I've gone actually for one of the Fijian Drua, number 6, Mida. I thought he was awesome on the week. More so his turnovers. He had 3 massive turnovers and was pretty massive around that Fijian Drua getting that result. Got Sammy Kane in there, who I thought outplayed Dalton on the weekend. Got Peter Gus at 8, Weber, O'Connor, Sotoro. I've actually gone with Umanga Jensen and Fatuli Paya as the midfielding pairing after their strong performance for the Highlanders. And then I've also gone Stevie P, who was at fullback. And I've actually gone Tima Whainganuku on the weekend, who had 18 tackles and topped the tackle count from Moana Pacifica. And actually had some pretty good work. We always talk about work rate with our outside backs, and I thought his work rate on the weekend was tremendous. So that's my Form 15 for this week. A lot of changes, but I've gone through, just like you said, who was playing in the form of the week. So that's how I've picked it.
Geez, you're a tough selector to leave Artie out. That's all I will say.
Well, I had Artie. I did have Artie, but again, just through Peter Gus, his performance on the weekend that's why I've gone with him. He was pretty influential in that performance.
Tough life being a selector.
Oh yeah, you're not going to please them all.
No. Some people in the squad not going to be happy. But sorry, Artie.
Curdy Eklund. I mean, he got about 3 or 4 turnovers, and he's doesn't even get a nod in Bryn's team.
Nothing. Enough for him to go buff a couple of power eights.
Oh yeah. He's good for that. That's why he's in the front row.
Now you mentioned the Drua, Bryn, and we should talk a little bit about them because they got their first win on the weekend, didn't they? That was tremendous from them. The final score, 31-26 over the Rebels. We picked that it was going to happen at some point soon, and it happened. Bryn, what were you most impressed with in this particular win?
For me, to be honest, it was the way they shut out the game. I think in tight situations, they were able to accumulate points through their penalties and the discipline of the opposition, of the Rebels. And so, you probably we've talked a lot around their set piece parity, and no doubt, maybe Jip might go into that. But for me personally, being able to close the game out in a tight situation with not just scoring tries or their flair. Yes, there were touches of that throughout the game, but I think the way of them being able to accumulate points from the discipline of the Rebels and getting those penalties and accumulating that scoreboard pressure in the end, the Rebels scored late, but through those points and being able to get the points through the penalties, it was the difference. And then so I really enjoyed their style of playing and how they finished off their game as a Fijian 15s rugby team. Not just like a sevens team that we've accustomed, and people might think that they're just good at playing sevens.
Yeah, look, I think their defence in the first half, 64% territory to the Rebels in that first half, and they were under the gun. And obviously the Rebels went up with a couple of tries, but they just hung tough in there. And then where I think they've made their biggest improvement is their balance of attack. So we spoke about their ability to find kick space and options. So 9 was their total amount of kicks in round 1, 22 on the weekend. That's a big difference for kicks in play. Mm-hmm. And so I think they're really showing that, okay, we actually need to balance our reserves. We're, as in our energy tank reserves, like where we're going to put our energy. Are we going to put it 90 metres out from our try line, or are we going to put it 20 or 30? And I think that worked wonders for them, with them still having their flair. So I think that every decision they made was a calculated decision. Like the quick tap that led to a try, that wasn't reckless. Do you know what I mean? That ended up in points, and then then they have that big pushover scrum. They take their points where they need it. So I don't know. It's just like the penny dropped with their game drivers and the way they structured their attack, and they've always had that that strong work ethic on D, but they were making their hits stick, and they won the breakdown battle. So they got more turnovers to the Rebels, and that always makes a big difference.
And they took those little opportunities when they came, right? There was the big break down the left-hand side for length of field try. There were things like that which change the momentum and make sure when the opposition are in your territory, they don't get points.
Absolutely, but I think they had the ability to make the most of those opportunities because they weren't tired. In weeks previous, when they haven't kicked out of their own half, they have sucked up so much energy defensively then to turn themselves straight onto attack. No one's going to survive under those sort of conditions in Super Rugby, and that's where it allowed them to take those opportunities because they had more juice.
Bryn, the Brumbies and the Reds, are they doing it the way that you expected them to? Wins against the Waratahs and the Force on the weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I picked the Force, so I got that one wrong. I thought the Force were going to tip them up, but probably with the Reds, that Reds performance, very similar to the Hurricanes. They had their opportunities, they scored points off it. So a lot of that game, the Force had a lot of opportunities to be able to score points, and probably just due to the execution, didn't get there right. And then the other way, with James O'Connor and his influences on the game, being able to set up with try assists was probably the difference as well, with his ability to be able to inject himself in the game in big moments. And then the Brumbies, traditionally, we know we're going to get with them around their set piece and being able to win it through that way and the variation of their game. But they didn't win. They didn't win a lot of the stats, to be honest. And so they'll probably be looking at that game and thinking, like, how can we get better? But again, they're winning games, and I picked the Force. So I had actually a pretty shocking week, to be honest. So pretty disappointed in myself for being fair.
The Force should have won that game. They had 2 yellow cards. They had 20 minutes down to 14 men. But the difference was O'Connor, mate. He was his ability to manipulate D to set his teammates up was just like, it was one of the best games I've seen him play in a long time. Obviously a place where he started his career, so you always go back to those sorts of places and want to perform. And he did that because it was pretty even throughout, but it was him sort of single-handedly putting guys away that made it push out to 4 tries to 2. But I don't think the Force will be they won't be happy with it, but they're there or thereabouts. The Brumbies, on the other hand, I've got a feel for the Waratahs. 2 weeks in a row, statistically, they've been all over teams, all over the Reds, all over the Brumbies, and just can't get it done. So I think hopefully they're sort of like the Highlanders in a way. Like it'll turn. You just speaking from experience from teams that may have struggled at times, it does turn. You just got to keep that belief and keep persevering with it. Because the Waratahs are doing some pretty special things, but they're just not making the most of it to get the results. And teams like the Brumbies and Reds know how to win. I know that sounds so stupid and cliche, but they do. With such little opportunity, they still got the job done. And they go up in sevens. Especially the Brumbies, they go up in sevens rather than threes, whereas the Waratahs made these amazing breaks. It was killed. They took the 3. And by half time, Brumbies have gone up to 21 and they're at 6. It's like, I don't know. It's not fair.
I think that's the beauty of if you look at the Highlanders and you look at the Waratahs as well, the ability of the playoff system is going to fit right into them, I think, Jip. You're talking around them being able to gain momentum at the back end of the season, hopefully, for those teams they're thinking that. And, they hit form like the Highlanders did when they won their championship at the back end of the year, but they're building good stepping stones where they are now. Yes, they're not getting the results on the pitch, but, if you look previously and you look at probably Aotearoa and AU trends, the AU, you probably needed to get a fast start to be able to be in that final. You wanted to start really well, but fortunately with this competition, you can afford to be able to start 0-3 or not be able to get wins early in the year, but can still build enough in your game to be better. To play well, not get the result, but then hopefully it kicks into gear at the back end of the year, and you could slip into the 8, whether it be that 8th or 7th spot, knowing that you're going to hit return to form hopefully at the back end of the year.
The back end of the year is tough, though, when you've played all Australian sides at the front end of the year. And I don't want this to sound arrogant, but, history has suggested that the New Zealand sides are the strongest sides in these combined competitions. Is that going to be something they're going to run into at the end of the year, Jipper?
Oh, it's too hard to tell. I think we'll know more when they first get that opportunity to play each other. Because you can't go on past years. I've really enjoyed watching some of the Aussie derbies. They've been really entertaining footy, and that's why I feel for the Waratahs, because they've provided a hell of a lot of entertainment and they don't have a lot of points to show for it on the table. So I'll keep my powder dry till that first week to see where things lie, and it's also what squads decimated with injury. There's a lot to consider between now and then.
Another game on the weekend that we had, which wasn't Super Rugby Pacific, it was Super Rugby Aupiki, and it was the pre-season game. The competition's obviously had a lot of setbacks, unfortunate setbacks because of COVID, and we wish we could see more of it. But unfortunately, we're looking at 3 rounds and no final now. The Chiefs, who a lot of people are talking up because they got a superstar backline, an absolute stellar backline, 28-20 over Matatu in their pre-season game. Relatively close. Matatu have got basically the history of being the Canterbury team, so they've won a lot of titles. After that long preamble, do you think that the Chiefs can win this whole thing? Do they look after the preseason like the teams are back?
They're definitely favourites. Like, if you look at the squad, there's an ample Black Ferns in that team. It's not to say that they won't be challenged, but you'd have to go. They're rearing hot favourites, and they got out to a hot start. I think they were up 21-3 at one stage. It finished 28-20, which was closer than probably the game suggests. But Matatu have Kendra Coxley to come back. The Blues have a number of Black Ferns and have been working hard, and as do the Canes. So it's not all said and done. But if you're looking at those teams on paper and the experience, Black Ferns skipper is the skipper of the Chiefs, Manawa. So I think that they'll go close. I'll still be supporting the Blues, of course, but it's What do you reckon, Bryn?
Yeah, look, I think that Chiefs team is pretty stacked. If you talk around the back line and being able to, hopefully Stacey Flula, hopefully she's not too banged up, because I saw her obviously in a shoulder brace or in a sling. So she's massive for them moving forward with just how she plays with distribution, her one-on-one ability with her footwork, and then you've got Portia Woodman out on the edge, who scores that 70-metre try through her speed and how much she can turn a game on her head with her ability. And then I think their forwards as well, Jip. I thought they were great on the weekend as well. I think Matatu, probably one of the solutions or learnings that they'll want is just defensively one-on-one tackles. I thought a lot of the time in the middle of that field, they missed a lot of tackles, and the Chiefs being able to go through and build momentum to then be able to get on the front foot ball was pretty good for the Chiefs. So I'm going to back Matatu. I think Kendra Coxedge is a massive part of that group, and her not being able to play is massive for them, and probably she adds a lot to that environment.
And on Thursday, they play Matatu again. So do we end up with the same result?
I'm going to back Matatu. I think having Kendra Coxedge in that environment and her back, hopefully she's playing, she'll be massive for them moving forward. And it wasn't too long ago that she was the best player in New Zealand, for both male and female, and it was warranted on her performances. So I think having her back in that environment will be the difference. And depending on Stacey Flula, if she doesn't play, it's a big loss for the Chiefs as well.
Well, They've got Chelsea Alley waiting in the wings, so I'm sure she'll fill a good gap in the midfield there. I'm going the Chiefs.
Chelsea Simple, actually. Chelsea Simple.
Yeah, true. My apologies, James Simple. Yeah. My apologies.
Yeah. So you're thinking Chiefs.
Yeah.
You basically like the Chiefs all round, no matter what comp it's in.
Oh no, look, I just say it how it is. It's just the facts.
Don't miss the kickoff of the first ever Super Rugby Aupiki. It's going to be a fantastic competition. So let's move on to the Six Nations. Crunch match this weekend. England versus Ireland. Who you tipping?
Ireland. Sexton back. Just the way they played against the French. I know they've come off a good win against Italy. That was around the red card scenario, but they played the team they played and got the result. I think they're a quality outfit, and hopefully, all things being equal, it's a tight contest, and England. I think England's like Ireland and France's ability to score points and score by sevens is a big point of difference. And I just don't think against either Ireland or France you're going to be able to chip away at threes. I could be wrong, but I think their attack needs to start setting fire. That's the English attack.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ireland as well. But we've talked about it. I think we talked about it last week, a few weeks ago, around how England can win this game. And it's been able to slow down Ireland's ball. We talked around their phase play shape and how lethal it is when they get that go forward ball, and Jamison Gibson Park's giving that lightning quick ball. So if you're England, I touched on it the other week, that 8-pack, they've got to be able to have that physical dominance and be able to really own that collision of the breakdown, slow down that ball, make it a dog fight, and then being able to, whether that be strangling them and holding them and then accumulating points through threes, or then scoring points when they do have the opportunity as well. But I'm picking Ireland. They'll be too tough. They've got too much firepower at the moment and how they're playing with their attack shape.
In golf, we'd call it moving day, wouldn't we? I think this round is moving round. This is where it gets won and lost. Yeah,
yes and no, because England do play France, so it gives Ireland the ability to potentially become the champs if they win this weekend and the following, and England can pip one of them. Or England wins this weekend and they're in the race and it's a straight head-to-head against the French. So yes, it's definitely will give us a clearer picture, but I don't think it's all said and done.
France v Wales. Do Wales stand a chance? They're at home.
Oh, look, I think they'll be there or thereabouts, but I just think the French are too slick at the moment. Man, they're just good both sides of the ball. They're desperate on defence when broken. Their counter-attack structure, their phase play structure, their ability to play off Dupont and intimate. There's just so much to like about them. And I know we always hone in on Dupont and intimate, but what the French forwards are doing in terms of their physicality, you talk about the physicality, like that was such a brutal match against the Irish. Like those are two big packs just going head to head, and they were actually the difference to winning that game. So it's a big ask for Wales.
Masvas, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go for the French just with how they've been playing. But again, I think it's another opportunity as well. We talked around Scotland and them being able to dominate and expecting them to win. Wales and knowing Wayne Jipper, he'll be seen as an awesome opportunity for that group of men to be able to tip up probably the favourites of the Six Nations. And so it's another banana skin game, another opportunity to show them that they're the real deal this year. And I think just on that, I think France will get the job done against the spirited Wales side.
Do you think Scotland will look a whole bunch better this weekend against Italy? I mean, they've shown so much potential.
Well, that's probably their goal. You're thinking around, we've talked around, they probably should have won a couple of those games just with the way they were playing. And so, they're probably seeing this game as something to stamp their authority and, having that kind of ability to win those games convincingly, knowing that they should win them. So, ideally, I'd hope to think that group, within the coaching staff and the players, they're thinking like, yep, we're probably out of the race of the Six Nations, but, a good performance here to be able to build confidence moving forward for not only the back end of the season, but, the World Cup's not too far away, and winning convincingly against Italian side that's been struggling for a while now is probably expectation for that group to win it pretty convincingly. Let's
have a look at the predictions for this week. Blues v Highlanders in Pacific.
Blues,
but the Highlanders need it, man. The Highlanders need it, but I'm going Blues.
Rebels, Brumbies.
Oh, Brumbies. Rebels are terrible.
Brumbies.
They are very good. It's true. We shouldn't laugh at them too much. I did enjoy the flick on from Matty Tamua at the start of the game against the Drua. At least there's some entertainment there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Love your work.
Got me on the hop.
Yeah, mate.
Hurricanes.
Got to tell them how it is.
Yeah, this is how it is.
Hopefully they can get better. But they've been terrible.
Yeah, 100%. Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica.
Canes.
Canes
As well. Crusaders Chiefs.
Chiefs.
So obviously the Chiefs are favourites, Bryn. So Crusaders.
I'll back our team.
Queensland Reds versus Fijian Drua. Bryn?
Reds.
And lastly, I don't think this is a tough one, or is it? Waratahs versus the Force. Waratahs at home.
Waratahs have got to get up. They've been playing some good rugby. I'll back them.
I'll go Force.
And it's a huge weekend of rugby. Wales versus France. France for both of you?
Yep.
Italy versus Scotland.
Scotland.
And Ireland versus England.
Ireland.
All round. So that looks like it could be the French basically sewing this thing up. All but this weekend. Plenty of rugby to catch this weekend. Sky Sport, of course, for the live action. RugbyPass.com for all of the analysis that you need. So much rugby. 6 nations. Super Rugby Aupiki, Super Rugby Pacific. Thank you very much to James Parsons. Bryn Hall down there in Christchurch. We'll catch you again next week on Aotearoa Rugby Pod.